Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, finally.
Yes, absolutely. We finally
Yeah.
did it. Hey, I appreciate you taking time out. I want to begin our conversation before we get into your latest album with surviving this pandemic we went through. We're going on the 4-year anniversary. How did you get through that time period and how did it change you?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I think at that time I started first we didn't know how long, and it was right after Winter Jazz and NAMM. So I was in some places that were like packed.
Yeah.
So you were like, you were kind of nervous about yourself. Like I've been in New York and LA. Like it's a whole vibe. So that aspect was there. And I was just like, okay. I also am a music director, at some churches, and those pastors, nobody knew how long, so they were like, "Oh, don't worry about your salary, we'll take care of you." So I was like, "Okay, however you want to do it, it doesn't, we're getting through." And then my wife's a teacher, and I teach also adjunct at Villa Maria College, so we were off, and then we had to go to doing um this like um basically virtual. Like, how do you get virtual piano lessons? How do we do virtual? Well, we did it, I guess, right? And the students, you saw all of that generation's anxiety start to whip up. Where I had students that didn't want to come back to school anymore, only wanted to do virtual. And then from there, once I found out, the financial piece, because we weren't spending money other than the bills in the house, right? And food. And so it lets you know how much money we spend that we kind of probably don't need to spend. I wasn't playing any shows, no concerts, no gigs, no traveling. It was different. Other than it being really bad and stuff, I got the most rest I've gotten in 15
Yeah.
years. After I got past the I can't do anything, the I can't,
Yeah.
it was time to be rest and be with family and really go the other way. Say, okay, well, I'm out of control. And then, of course, everybody worked on their home studio. So I was recording stuff that other artists had sent me doing. It was called, I first started with like these COVID tracks. And I would do like these kind of visual tracks with really with music behind it with artists. Lizzo's bassist, Siri Appleby, I know. So I did something that she did years ago. We're both from Buffalo. And then I did something with Brent Burkhead out of, he's in DC now. And then I did something with Indian brother, and he's Narayan Papanaba, and he does the, whole Indian vibe. And another vocalist, I did something else. I did something myself. I just did something. Then started doing COVID conversations. I started just talking to people, and then it turned into interviews. And I had friends on, I had mentors on. George Caldwell, who used to be with, he was for 30 years he was in New York, so he's played with a little bit of everybody, and now he's based here. He's teaching at the University of Buffalo. And so it was just, I had some gospel because gospel's in my background. I had some gospel cats, some Grammy nominated stuff. Tony Rhodes, I did. And of course I did Scott Tixier. He's a violinist out at UNT, also plays with the unit I have. So I stayed busy, and then Floyd kicked up, and that changed the whole, a whole tenor of everything. So yeah, it's just really trying to get back and being as healthy as I got in that time space.
Yeah.
And try to continue that health. Try not to keep the rat race that we're trying to keep right now.
Yeah.
We're kind of trying to make it go back to something that it feels like it's not supposed to.
Yeah.
It feels like we need to be on another path, but we do the best we can.
Yeah.
And just writing. I started this project during the pandemic too, so that was a whole vibe.
Well, and that's the thing. The latest album, is Black Hole Live. Talk to me a little bit about this project, how it came about, what your artistic vision was.
Well, yeah, I had started like with a 10 piece, and it was called Kemp. Excuse me. I had, it was like more of a spaced out sunrise slash Walter Kemp kind of vibe. Ray Scott is another mentor of mine that passed away. He was a member of Sunrise Orchestra, and it was a vision kind of coming out of what was going on with that. So we did I think of 2021. I think it was 2021 we did Kemp and the Revelation, and it was just kind of like we did it actually at the CMC Jazz Fest, and it was more or less just a one-off concert. I wasn't looking to do an album. It was, but it became something. So from there, I was like, oh wow, it became something, and then I pared it down to a 7 piece and recorded an album. And from there, at the 7 piece in an album, we did a whole release, and just with that, it kind of didn't move the way I thought it was going to move. It was like um, God, universe, however you think, was just like, nah, you're not quite there yet. So then I pared it down to 5, and we were getting dates. Like, we were getting dates at that time with 5, and then I switched out the drummer and switched out a couple of pieces, and it worked better that way. And by that time, all the written work I had, I actually was able to do more of the written work, because a lot of it before we were doing sunrise pieces, and we weren't really doing any of my written work. But this time I was like, okay, I can bring some of my compositions in, and literally I knew instantly. We did something for the 2022 CMC Jazz Fest. I think we had maybe an hour rehearsal before the gig, and I come back home actually because it was in my hometown, that particular festival, because I was artistic director. So I took one of the concerts, and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, yeah, I think we found it. Like, yeah, I think these guys, I can do it. So yeah, that's how it kind of came along.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
A journey, a journey. I hope I don't want them thinking I'm gonna come on here and start just blowing over changes. It's that, that's not really how I was raised in music. Listen, it's great. I'm not taking nothing away, no shade on anyone that it's a beautiful thing. It's a but for this, it's gonna be a journey. When you listen to this, you're like, okay, well, what's the next piece? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, well, what's the next track gonna be? Like, it should take you on, and by the time you get to the track where I have a duet on there, it should really be like, okay, now what are we doing next?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be a journey. It's supposed to be a journey of joy. That's kind of I hope my superpower is joy. It's supposed to be like joy. I mean, you're gonna hear a ton of interplay. Like, it's really more about who's playing the music than the music. Because you got to be a listener to kind of be in this group or play with us. Even if I have people that substitute sub on some gigs, they're listeners. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm looking for.
So you grew up watching your father at Carnegie Hall, correct?
Yeah, yeah. My father was a classical gospel musician, and we were he was living in Buffalo, and then moved us to New York, and then moved us back to Buffalo. But then he would get his work would be done in Carnegie. Like, he was this that's why I get the composer type
Yeah.
vibe. Yeah.
So how did this journey into the jazz begin? How did it kind of evolve into where you're at today?
Yeah, it kind of happened because it's funny. I was thinking about it. I'm kind of doing the same thing my dad did in gospel, but I'm doing it in jazz, right? Um, he would bring all these persons to our house, big names in gospel, um, and he would know them, and he would form a group, and they would go on tours. and they would do workshops in this city. He went to Cleveland. He would go to Alabama. He would go to, you know, Texas, and he would do this. So I'm kind of doing the same thing. My wife actually got me into jazz per se. Um, I got with her like when I was like 16, and she moved down to Virginia doing her graduate work. And so if that was 16, was 95. So she probably moved down to Virginia in 2099. And I still was doing undergrad. And she brought Ornette Coleman. She brought Miles Davis, Sketches of Maine, Sketches of Spain, excuse me, Sketches in Spain, and then she brought Coltrane. She brought Love Supreme.
Yeah.
So that was like my introduction, and that's why you get this kind of out, kind of soulful-ish kind of style, because she kind of brought me in that way, and then I just got caught the bug. I was living in Virginia around DC, in Richmond, and they used to have, I think right before I really got into it, Nate Smith was down in Richmond, so I might have caught a couple of him, and then he moved up, and they had this band called I'm drawing a blank, and I wish wow, I'm drawing a blank on this band. It's Hales. I'm drawing a blank, and I just spoke to a guy that was down there. Was like, oh, you can't remember it. They would do it every Monday. And a lot of those guys went up to New York and just got into it there. But I had quit playing, so I was just, I wanted to be a mathematician. I was getting my undergrad in mathematics. I was a tournament chess player. I was really just a listener at that point, trying to carve something different than what my dad had. Slowly did I not know I would be coming back that way. So, yeah.
So after all of these years of being in this profession, what do you look forward to the most? What do you like the most about being a professional musician?
For me, it's an interaction. Um, it's so many cats out there. It's so many cats out there, and for the most part, musicians and artists are just beautiful. They have different takes, and as long as I'm open to, whatever. Like I did a recording with Luke maybe last year. Luke Stewart. He called me in, him and Brian Settles. And I think Trey, Warren Trey Crudrup, Crudrup, yeah, was on Crude Up, excuse me,
Yeah.
was on drums. And just it was just it was just a vibe. And then we did a gig after. It was just a vibe. It's just really just a fellowship, and how everybody, this culture we have is, even though it might feel a little different from east to west, everybody's kind of doing the same thing with the same love, and just flowing, just vibing with them.
Yeah.
That's,
So why do you love jazz?
it gives me the freedom to be myself. It's the continuation of Black music. Jazz for me is no different than gospel. It's just in what context. And I still have to tell a story in gospel, just that the vocabulary might be just a little different. Um, I maybe jazz is a type of dialect of English, and gospel's a patois, or vice versa. We're still speaking this language, this Black American music with this European, type of scale system, but it still is this. It's still the same thing. That's why people that can get from all the way from out music to, I don't know, any Soul Live, who's another like Buffalo native. So yeah.
So if you could go back in time and do a time machine and see one concert in the history of jazz with your own eyes, where are you going?
I'm probably going with Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Miles Davis, and Tony, to the European tour they had. And Herbie's always talking about how he hit the wrong note. It wasn't the wrong.
Yeah.
So that's like me. It's like I played something, my guys adjusted, or they played it. We just heard the music. That's the concert. So that's the tour I'm going to.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
those guys were at another level, and it wasn't really even about the music. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the day, Walter, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I wish you'd asked me 10 years ago. I'd have said something very different. I guess now I've grown. I guess when you get to a certain place where you want to know who you really are, so that you can effectively, you know, give this music to people. Knowing your limitations, it means you know your strengths.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm a lover. I'm full of joy. I give people a place that is where they can rest. I'm open arms. Um, I like to tell stories. And I try to tell the truth.
Right on. So if anyone wants to get the album, learn about live shows, anything, where do they go? How do they do that?
You can go to www.walterkemp3.com. You can grab it there. We have a merch page. Go ahead and grab some merch. We're on all social media platforms. I made it available so it's easy for everybody to get to. But definitely check me out. Tonight, if you're in the Western New York area, we're going to be at Hauser Art House from mid-July 9th-ish over to mid-August. I'll be over in Europe, particularly Italy. I'm doing some duet with Sylvia Bolognese, and I'll also be bringing my band over. Still be on the lookout. I've got some other shows, and still filling up the whole year for this album and this project. So definitely check us out.
Right on. Walter, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Good luck with the tour and have a great year, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you so much, and thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me, man.
Yes, absolutely.